Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, theys and thems, and everything in between, to the Esoteric Wellness Podcast,
where we explore health and wellness from the deep, dark depths of the unknown, the hidden, the misunderstood, the misinterpreted, the misled, and the forgotten. Welcome, everyone, to episode 8 of Esoteric Wellness. So I'm excited about today's episode because it's going to be unique in a few different ways. First of all, Megan will not be joining us for today's episode. We had some scheduling conflicts, and she's just got a lot going on at work right now. They're short-staffed, so wasn't able to have her here in the room with us as we record today. But I promise you, this isn't just going to be me rambling on by myself. I'm going to spare you all from that. And that leads me to the second reason today's episode is special. This is our first episode with an outside guest. So we will be having a conversation with a special guest about this pain recovery process. And I'll introduce our guest here in a moment. But first, we are going to continue our discussion about chronic pain. Last episode, we got into the neuroscience of pain, how pain happens, the neuroplastic types of changes that kind of progress acute pain into a chronic pain. So we're going to further that discussion today by really getting into the nuts and bolts of how the heck do we reverse all that and recover from chronic pain. So today we're welcoming Dr. Tara King. She is a doctor of physical therapy and director of clinical operations at Lin Health. She specializes in pelvic floor physical therapy and chronic pain recovery. So she is also doing this work in coaching, helping people recover from chronic pain. So her and I are going to get into, again, the nuts and bolts of that process. What is that process? What does it entail? And also discuss some interesting ideas, maybe in the coaching perspective and other things. So without further ado, welcome, Tara. Happy to have you.
I'm flattered that you asked me, Kyle, and excited to get to know you a little bit better in this process too.
Yeah, it's like we've been working together for quite a while now, but we really haven't had a chance to get to know each other either. So yeah, it'll be fun.
I feel like we've kind of heard little like blips of each other's pain story and pain histories and what's worked for us through like Slack messages to other people. So I have this like funny version of Kyle and his story. I'm like, you should ask Kyle. He probably knows that. But yeah, it'll be nice to actually hear.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, this is kind of a continuation of our last episode, which we dove deep into pain neuroscience, which was really fun. So today I want to make sure we get into how chronic pain is solved. How do we get out of chronic pain? Because I kind of alluded to it in the last episode and I feel like it was leading people on, like there's a secret answer out there and I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I love it.
So I want to make sure we get to that today. I also want to talk
the most important question ever.
Yeah. I also want to talk a little bit about the coaching experience from that perspective and kind of how that looks and feels, and then maybe some more fun stuff if we have time.
Amazing.
So firstly,
let's get to it.
Could you share with our listeners a little bit about your professional background?
Yeah. So, my professional background right now is all because I myself had a decade and a half of chronic pain. So I'll start by saying that what I do is because of where I've been. And I'm currently the director of clinical operations at Lin Health. So I manage about 45 pain recovery coaches at this point, of which you are one. Wow. And also different Lin Health medical group doctors and individuals on our clinical care team. I myself am a physical therapist. I specialize in pelvic floor physical therapy. And I also taught yoga for a really long time.
Wow. So my next question was, what brought you to this work? And you already kind of answered that. It sounds like it was this mission to figure out what was going on with you personally.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're someone who's had chronic pain before. A lot of individuals who have chronic pain are also very motivated to get out of it. And I think that's the most misunderstood thing about people who have chronic pain is like, why would I want to feel this way? Of course, I'm going to try everything and get the answers. It's like a survival thing, right? Like evolutionarily make this stop. So I did a lot to try to find an answer to my pain. I even went to physical therapy school to try to find an answer to my pain. And I was lucky to come across Charlie Merrill and Howard Schubner's course while I was in physical therapy school and realize, oh my gosh, this is the answer I've been looking for that my very expensive degree didn't quite give me. So yeah, just trying to find the answers for myself to try to live better and more healthily led me to this work.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's one of the tragic misconceptions with chronic pain is that, like, people are making it up or they want to be in pain somehow. And
Totally.
nobody wants to be in pain.
Totally. I watched the Wisdom of Trauma documentary on Gabor Mate. Have you seen that?
I have not, no.
It's really good. It's behind a paywall, but I paid to see it, as we should do for great things. But he said this thing about individuals with heroin addiction, where in his recovery process with them and the therapy that he does with them, he would say, what if the choice you made was the most reasonable choice that you have in front of you for what you'd been through? And that always hit me really hard. Like none of us think that you know, become addicted to an opioid or eventually go try heroin and use heroin. But not to get too dark too fast here, but I think that trying to escape the suffering that we're in is such a human thing. And luckily, you know, I never went down a medication route. I tried many other ways, but nobody who's in pain really wants to be in pain. Maybe you think differently, but
No, I would totally agree. I think that's the purpose of pain in the first place, is to make whatever situation is causing it aversive so we get the heck away from it.
exactly. Yeah.
Reminds me of something, I think, was it Dr. James Hollis, I think? It's a psychiatrist, and he described it like very similarly, like every seemingly illogical action by someone is logical in their specific set of circumstances.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Which I personally think is the benefit of working with a coach on your pain recovery journey, just to say, since we're both actually coaches in this, is to try to find what's also the logical healing route for this individual in front of you. Because
Right.
it's not the same for everybody for how we get out of chronic pain.
Yeah. And I think, well, we'll get to that, but that's why answering the question of how do you do it is so hard, because it's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Knowing that it's possible is definitely the first step, though.
yeah, definitely. So could you share a little bit about your own kind of personal story with chronic pain?
Yeah. Yeah. So it started when I was a dancer in high school. I had chronic low back pain and SI joint pain to the point where, you know, I was controlling everything around me. I sat on like 2 pillows and a folded up towel in my low back while I drove, and I could only drive certain distances. And I'd be in dance rehearsal after school till like 9 p.m. and then immediately drive to the physical therapist at 9:30 p.m. He was open late. And it didn't go away for a really long time. I'm not someone Surgery was recommended to me at one point, but there was nothing wrong on my MRI, so they couldn't really say what the surgery should be. I think if there was something wrong on the MRIs, I would have probably considered it. But I tried everything. I was, in chiropractics and dance, or not dance. I wished I was in dance. All I wanted was to be a professional dancer. That was not what I was doing. Physical therapist, pelvic floor physical therapist, energy healers. I tried every single type of movement medicine that there is. I even took like a yoga teacher training and then yoga therapeutics course, and even did like a clinical internship with the physical therapist who taught it, because I still couldn't find the answer to why I had sacroiliac joint pain. And yeah, I heard really awful things about it. Like, don't let your legs go apart a certain distance. Watch how you get out of the car. You'll never run again. You'll never dance again. You can never do hip hop dance. So it was very distressing in terms of what I wanted my career to be. I'd say my body stood in the way. But I would say it was distressing in the like 4 to 5 out of 10 level of chronic pain. I got bad advice from a PT during this, where he said the reason for my low back pain was probably because of my pelvic floor muscles. I've heard this before. I became a pelvic floor PT, right? Like, still trying to find the anatomical reason for why I hurt. And I was told to hold a permanent pelvic floor contraction called like a Kegel or Kegel. And then I got chronic pelvic pain, and I started like peeing my pants all throughout my 20s. I didn't know why, which is scary, right? Like, bowel or bladder changes can be related with, lumbar spine pathology. So I was like, oh my gosh, something really wrong with me. Why do I pee my pants all the time? I eventually found a different pelvic PT who told me to stop holding it all in, which helped. And I also developed pelvic pain at that time, just because I kind of had different experiences where I was holding everything in and then had negative sexual experiences. And we know how neural pathways work. There were just some pathways that were formed. So that's kind of, I don't know, I guess I would say my normal everyday life chronic pain. Then I got diagnosed with a really rare form of meningitis when I was 21. It's called Mollaret's meningitis. It's caused by HSV2, herpes simplex virus 2. And I'm one of the lucky ones who has a really rare form of this, where, as I was told by the doctor then, the herpes virus at any time can replicate enough to cause meningitis and overtake my meninges. So I got meningitis diagnosed with cerebrospinal fluid tap once at 21, and then again 3 years later. And then I've probably had it 2 more times since then, but I was done with lumbar spinal taps. I kind of learned better, I guess I would say, how to move forward. And we could kind of get into that with all this pain stuff. But from that, I developed severe chronic headaches and neck aches, kind of that like meningitis. The test for meningitis is like, bring your chin to your chest. And if you can't do it, they're like, ooh, maybe you have meningitis. So if you imagine all that kind of neck tension and holding back there, I felt like that most days. But around like 3 p.m. each day, it would get so bad I'd have to like lay down a lot of days in my 20s. And yeah, so
Wow.
that's my story.
It's a lot. I always find
I'm not here for nothing,
right. And I think that's why, so many coaches have a story of their own. And I think that's why they're so passionate about it. They care so much, is because they've been through it themselves. I find it interesting though, always, like how people stuck in chronic pain, they're doing all this learning, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And it's almost like it uses that knowledge against you, because it starts mimicking all these things you've been learning about. And it's really interesting how that works.
Did you have that experience?
not to as significant of a degree. I mean,
Yeah.
I never understood what was happening as it was happening. I never knew chronic pain was a thing. I just thought my body was broken. So
Yeah.
looking back, it makes perfect sense now. Like my back pain started in middle school. Like no injury, no nothing. Why would my back hurt when I was that young? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Other than it was a stressful transitional time in childhood, right? And it
Yeah.
popped again in high school for a couple years as well, and then again in early adulthood. And I actually did injure my back at some point too, which of course didn't help the whole thing. And after that point, it just stuck around and never left. Started doing all the treatments, injections, chiropractor, eventually, surgery, and nothing went away. It just stuck around. And I was told many times, it's as good as it's going to get. You just have to deal with it, suck it up. So that's what I thought for a long time too. And my back is broken,
How'd
it's
you,
screwed up, and there's nothing I can do about it.
when did you realize there was something you could do about it?
That's the funny part of this for me is so we'll describe the process, but I did the process on my own, totally oblivious to the fact that it could help my pain. That was never my objective, never my intention. I was doing it for totally different reasons, and my pain disappeared. And I thought it was really weird. Like, what? I had no idea why or how that happened until later when I started learning about this stuff. It's like, wow, I had chronic pain and didn't even know it. I fixed it and didn't even know it.
Yep. I kind of accidentally fixed my low back pain and SI joint pain as well. And then I more used the process that we have at Lin and know in the pain reprocessing world for the headaches and the neck aches. Because maybe I know with your back surgery and once you get something fixed, there is a structural change. My meningitis felt very structural, right? It felt very like this is something wrong with me. And thankfully, Howard Schubiner blew my mind and told me there wasn't in a secret message in Zoom during a course. But yeah,
He does that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that story, and let's jump into the process.
yeah.
I'm going to ask you a tough question, and just because it's tough and I like watching other coaches struggle to answer it. Could you describe the process in like just a few sentences?
The process of getting out of pain is unique to every individual, related to how the neural pathways for your chronic pain got laid down in the first place. So I'll borrow from Rachel Zoffness in saying that you have a unique pain recipe, and therefore your ingredients for getting out of it will be your, I don't know, cup of tea or piece of pie. Mainly, they have to do with reappraising sensations in your body as safe that you once thought were dangerous, looking at the neural pathways in your life that have become associated with pain and don't need to be, and making your world a lot bigger than it was, and kind of challenging every belief and behavior and relationship that you've made around pain and turning it on its head until your life looks a lot better.
Totally agree with all that. What I find is when you say something like they're like, what does that mean?
Oh, I know. I'm so far down this rabbit hole.
That's not satisfying.
Yeah.
What do I do?
I'll give the 10-step program if you want it. Ready?
So let's dig into this. I like kind of describing it using kind of the definition provided through, well, let me back up. There are kind of many different pathways to the same destination. There's several different styles or approaches out there. We're going to talk a little more generally about all of them in aggregate, but there are different approaches to do the same thing. That's my point. But I like kind of describing it using the definition from the approach of pain reprocessing therapy that Dr. Howard Schubiner and Alan Gordon and several others kind of developed. They kind of break it down to 5 main components. And you don't need all 5 necessarily. I went through it without 2 of them blindly, and it still works. But 5 main components, one being education on how pain works, pain neuroscience, which is what the whole last episode was about. Why do you think that is important? Is it important? Why is it helpful?
Yeah. I think it's super important. And I think that like PNE, pain neuroscience education, is taught. It was taught in my physical therapy program. There's whole studies just on pain neuroscience education. It in and of itself is not enough. It needs to be applied to your own symptom presentation. But I think that pain neuroscience education is really empowering because it gives you reason to believe that you're not as broken as you thought that you were. And science, I don't know, science can be controversial, but there's also something a little bit less controversial about science at the same time. Like, I'm not trying to argue with you about something. I'm just kind of telling you how the neurophysiology of pain works based on imaging studies.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice low-hanging fruit of an entryway for people to recognizing that pain is just not what they thought, right? If I say pain doesn't equal tissue damage, it's like, well, yes, it does. I've been told that my entire life by every doctor. Why wouldn't it be like, I hurt my finger and I have pain? And it's like, well, because of these studies that show that there are these central processes in your brain and your spinal cord and your peripheral nerve level where things have changed. They've become sensitized. Different neurotransmitters have changed. And, I hate saying that pain is learned because I think that's a complex concept, but neural pathways around pain have formed and they could be what's perpetuating your pain.
Sure.
It's like the most important first step.
And I think too, if you're approaching this with the intention of recovering from chronic pain, I think the education sets, lays the foundation of the whole process. It's kind of the context in which you think about everything, that you explain things, that you, it's really kind of building the language you're going to use to think and talk about all this stuff.
Yeah. I really only used pain neuroscience education to get out of my low back and SI joint pain, honestly. I learned it and I was like, oh, that's why I had pain. Cool. No problem. Didn't work for the other pain quite. I needed other techniques, but that was enough for some of it because I realized, oh, wow, I wasn't broken. This didn't mean that my SI joint was always out of place and I had too much curve in my lumbar spine. And that's why I had pain. Information can free us.
Yeah, no, for me personally too, kind of going through it backwards, adding the education last, it has helped though. And like, I don't have flare-ups as often. And when I do, they're not as big of a deal because I understand what's happening and why. Rather than thinking, oh, I must have worked too hard or did something weird to my back, and now it's just flaring up on me. So yeah, I would say my number of flare-ups I have today versus before I learned this stuff is, probably cut in half, honestly.
I don't have low back pain anymore.
Yours totally gone.
Or SI joint pain. It's different for my headaches, but
and that's probably, I would assume, I do have, I've got hardware in my spine, so there are structural differences there that sure they probably cause soreness and pain now and then. So the second aspect is kind of gathering personalized evidence in your own pain symptoms, how they behave, how they present, really looking for that validation that, yeah, this is what I'm dealing with.
Did you find that step important for you?
Important? No, I found it validating though.
Yeah.
It made things make
The
sense.
creation. Yeah. This was really valuable for my structural diagnosis, Muller's meningitis, because I was so convinced, even when I took Charlie and Howard's course and learning about all this, I'm like, this is so great. This explains how I got out of my low back, SI joint, pelvic pain. But, I have this disease, so it doesn't apply to my neck and head. And I said that in my opening to the course, and I got, a secret message from Howard, like, what diagnosis did you say you had? And I eventually met with him, and I made this evidence list of ways in which my pain, neck aches and headaches, were actually behaving like neuroplastic primary pain and weren't behaving like this disease at all. So for me, with my disease process and my pain presentation, I found that, or I was told really, that there's no way a virus can replicate itself in your body enough by 3 p.m. every day to cause you a headache and a neck ache. Like, that's just not a thing. And I think that we come up with these structural reasons, like that we piece together from different doctors to try to explain what happened. And once I said it out loud to a doctor who had a different lens on, I realized how stupid it sounded. Like, I was like, oh, I have like a meningitis flare each day at 3 p.m. He was like, no, you don't. How did you get that? I was like, I don't know. I've been to all these doctors. Like, I just kind of pieced that together, that it was related. When, really we looked at other things in my life and perhaps why that would be occurring. So the evidence list piece and just kind of ruling out the body and how physiology works in contrast to how my pain was presenting was like vital for me in breaking through.
Yeah. I kind of think of that step as like reframing your story. Like up until that, your story was, I have meningitis. That's what's wrong with me. And you use all this evidence to come up with a new story that, okay, maybe there's not anything wrong with me.
Totally. Which is earth-shattering. Right. And there's a lot of grief in that too. Because you're like, wait, what? I know that I veer a little bit from Howard and Alan, and then nothing's wrong with me, because I think that step stops people sometimes. And you and I both have something like structural. I think it stops people in their tracks and shuts them down from this work. And I really want to validate, like, there are neurophysiological changes that take place in your body with chronic pain. It's just that they don't have to be there and you can reverse them. It's not that there's nothing wrong. Your neural pathways have changed. Different areas of your brain light up. I actually explained this to a 12-year-old and she was like, so my neural pathways are broken. And I was like, ooh, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to validate that there are changes in your body. It's not all in your head. It's literally not all in your head, right? Like, there are changes that have taken place. Neural pathways are real. They're not just something we think up. They're pathways that are formed. It's just that, unlike my unfortunate, incurable, like meningitis, for now, who knows, they can be changed.
Yeah. That was one of the points I wanted to make, is this isn't just for people with nothing physically wrong necessarily. Oftentimes it's complex and there are structural problems in the body. There are disease maybe. But the brain is amplifying, blowing out of proportion the pain response to that. So like something I was working on just this morning with somebody who had arthritis in their hands, for example. That's a real structural thing. It's there. We're not going to deny that, but it shouldn't be extreme debilitating pain if the same time.
Yeah. Or even just starting with the question, like, what if it didn't have to be?
Yeah.
Like, that's all you need to start, right? Like a little reframe. What if it didn't have to be like this? Instead of kind of how you said with your pain story, you were told over and over, well, this is as good as it's going to get. It's like the question that can take you into this, how do I get out of chronic pain world, can just be that question. Okay, well, what if this isn't as good as it has to get? What if it can get a lot better?
Yeah. What if it even just gets a little better? I mean,
I was going to say a little, but
that's
I
an
really want
improvement.
people to know it can get a lot better is the
Sure,
thing.
sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that evidence gathering, it's really powerful a lot of times. Sometimes it's scary because it's challenging your story. It's challenging what you believe about what's happening, and that's hard. And we'll go ahead and pause it here for our first break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the interview. And welcome back to Esoteric Wellness. So just finishing up a first break here, and we'll dive right back into my interview with Tara King. So the third part is learning to relate to, view, think about pain sensations through a lens of safety. So
What the heck does that mean?
Yeah. We've kind of proven through evidence and education that maybe there's nothing wrong here, or if there is, it's not that severe. So the pain I'm feeling isn't this huge sign of danger that I automatically kind of assume it is.
Yeah. Did you talk about predictive coding in your episode on pain neuroscience education?
I don't know that if I use that term, but I think I talked about it a little bit through just conditioning.
Yeah. I think that's one of the most helpful pieces for me in reappraising sensations is not dangerous, is recognizing that predictive coding's a thing. Yeah. So 3 p.m. was dangerous for me. Why? I don't know. I made up all the reasons why my virus would have replicated enough by 3 p.m. based on what I'd eaten, what I'd drank. I had so many reasons. None of them were right. What had happened was predictive coding. Maybe one day my meningitis first came on. Actually, it's so funny. Maybe I went to the hospital at 3 p.m. for the first time, which I actually did. Now that I'm telling the story, I've never realized it. But somehow 3 p.m. got associated as a dangerous time for me. There's nothing dangerous about it. There doesn't need to be a huge psychological reason, a reason why. Benign things like that blue cup you're picking up right now. If I'm having an asthma attack, my brain can latch on to that blue cup and be like, well, blue cups are really dangerous. They cause asthma attacks. Like, whoa, that was a really false association, brain. But I see you were just trying to pick up on what was going on to protect me. So recognizing that predictive coding is something that our brain does all the time to just try to make meaning of our surroundings when it doesn't make sense helped me get over a lot of these kind of pain triggers to then be able to reappraise the sensations in my body as safe. Like I'd feel head sensations at 3 p.m. and I'd be like, look, there's actually nothing dangerous about 3 p.m. I see these sensations. They're completely okay right now. I don't need to think about what I ate. I don't need to think about what I drank, my caffeine intake. I can actually just let them go and not focus on them because I know they're not dangerous. And just that line of thinking took away my 3 p.m. trigger.
Yeah, it's amazing how our brain learns to associate things together. It's doing this with so many other things beyond pain too. I mean, a lot of our daily life is kind of ruled by this stuff that we're not even aware of. But like I always think of my youngest brother got really sick as a young child, Um,
Mm.
and the last meal he ate was a hamburger before that happened. And for many, many years, he couldn't eat hamburgers. He would get nauseous and feel sick. And obviously
Wow.
that didn't cause his illness. Um,
Yeah.
but his brain made that association, and it took a long time to undo that.
Yeah. I was told red wine was really dangerous for me by an acupuncturist during my meningitis days. And if I'd smell it, I'd get a headache immediately. And now I love red wine. It's my favorite wine that there is.
Yeah.
And it was just because I was told it was dangerous.
Something too, like most people don't like the taste of coffee, for example, when they first try it. But over time we learn, oh, coffee's good for me. Coffee's helpful. And we eventually learn to like the flavor of coffee.
I was told coffee was bad for me and dangerous by that same acupuncturist and many others.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I would get like really bad headaches and neck aches when I had it. And, I just drank it the last 3 years with no problem. So you can unlearn these predictive coding associations too.
Definitely. And we're always learning and unlearning them throughout our lives too. It's always going on, whether we're aware of it or not.
Totally. I love that focusing on just kind of the natural ability you already have to do this stuff, right? Like you already do this around a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
We just have to apply it to the stuff related to your painful or uncomfortable sensations. You have this natural ability.
Definitely. So step 4 is addressing other emotional threats, which our life is full of them.
Yeah. I skipped that and I still got better.
I think this is where I started.
Yeah. This is where my work is now. I think you can only get so much better without addressing some of these, truly.
Yeah, this is the interesting part in my mind, because you really get to the underlying root of the issues. It's not really about pain, but what's driving that pain, what's continuing to make your brain think you're in danger all the time. And that's a huge variety of things for different people.
Yeah. I think one of the things in kind of the evidence activity step 2 that you talked about is kind of looking back at a timeline of your different pain flares and episodes. So I told my story here so we could kind of overlay emotional and stressors on top of that. 16, high school, dancing. What else was going on? I had an alcoholic stepmom. My parents were divorced, and she was a bit of a threat to my, unfortunately, half siblings. So I felt kind of very responsible, and that lasted that whole kind of time. So I think there was that stressor, and then the patterns established, and then it keeps going, and you look for more answers, and it keeps going on. When I think about getting, meningitis and pain happening, like I was diagnosed at 21 with a disease nobody knew anything about that came with an STD, and no doctors could give me any answers. So emotional stressor along with it. Yeah, like the grounds were ripe for neuroplastic or primary pain forming with my pain. And I wish like they just give me a little pamphlet right then. It was it for everyone diagnosed with anything at the hospital. Like, by the way, this kind of pain usually goes along with emotional stressors, of which a diagnosis can be one. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And looking back at my pain, I mean, when it came on in middle school, I had a lot of social anxiety all through school. And I think that was my key driver into high school too. And then after high school, I joined the military and high stress job and all that. And with the actual injury I had, which in hindsight probably wasn't all that severe, but sure felt like it at the time. And even after that, I always gravitated towards these high stress jobs. I don't know why I did that. Um, and it wasn't until I like, well, maybe we need to take a step back away from this and decrease stress in my life. And that was kind of the first major step forward in my pain, was eliminating stress where I could and seeing the benefit.
Yeah. So that was your step 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear more about your step 4. So how did you kind of recognize and learn that on your own? And what did you do?
I think it started with like this realization that what I was doing in life wasn't making me happy, that I was chasing what I thought other people wanted me to be doing rather than what I wanted to do. And starting to make some changes more towards what I wanted to do came with a big reduction in stress, because I wasn't anymore chasing these high stress positions, taking on the world as it felt like sometimes.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I saw this reduction in stress, obviously, and pain. And again, I didn't connect the two, but I was much happier. I was enjoying my life much better. And then the next stage of that was really dealing with deeper seated, like, for whatever reason, I learned expressing emotions was a bad thing, and learning how to express emotions, and self-compassion was another big thing for me.
So if your pain had a message of danger back then that it was trying to tell you, what would it have been?
That you're not expressing who you really are, and you feel bad about it.
Way to go, pain.
Yeah, thanks.
Way to give it to him.
That was a tough lesson to learn.
It was. It's not in this 5-step, but I do think that there is some step of, I don't know, it's different for everyone, but like understanding, maybe having a little bit of gratitude and thankfulness, I guess I will say, for your pain, like not viewing it as the enemy. Basically befriending your pain really can get at that whole reappraising sensations is not dangerous. It's like, what if you are trying to alert me of something right now? Maybe it's, I predicted a while ago 3 p.m. was dangerous. Didn't you tell me what? Okay, you're just looking out for me. Thanks so much. It's not. Or like, I really don't want to be in this relationship, or I'm scared I have this disease in my body and I wish that you'd talk about it. Or like, get some soothing around this, right? Like, what if our pain did have a really great, lovely message to tell us? And if we were just taught that language of how to interact with the sensations in our body early in life, we could have taken out the struggle and the suffering and just actually heard the messenger.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's like, had we learned to listen to our body and it's what it's trying to tell us much sooner, maybe it wouldn't have escalated to a point of using pain to tell us that.
Totally. I mean, I had headaches, I think, my whole life, really, if I go back. And it was always like my parents got divorced when I was 7 and headaches started. I'd go on a family vacation I didn't want to be on, and I'd have a headache so bad I'd lay in bed that day. Like, it's pretty obvious. It's really obvious, really. And if I were to go back, I would sit down with her, that girl, and be like, do you really want to be here? Tell me what's going on other than your headache, right? It's easy to talk about the headache. Not so easy to say, you seem like you're not enjoying yourself.
Yeah, that's
Or how are you feeling?
a tough realization to come to. And it's probably a lot easier to say there's something wrong with my head than
Totally.
I'm not happy.
Were you part of the pediatric pilot program at Lin?
I was, yeah.
You were. Did you recognize that with some of the pediatric members that you worked with?
Definitely. It was often very connected to anxiety and very connected to whatever in their life was causing the anxiety. And once they learn to see that connection, yeah, no problem.
It got better so fast.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was like, oh, couldn't it be this easy for adults too? Like the connection's the same. Sure, we have more layers and neural pathways and doctors and explanations and stuff, but just the simplicity with which I think that a child makes a connection, and it's like a poof, got it. Yeah, I'm angry. I should just say I'm angry. Or,
Right.
I don't want to go to soccer. I don't like it. Oh,
Yeah, there were a couple of those kids. I mean, 2 sessions done.
yeah.
It's like,
I know.
that's crazy.
Why is it so much harder for us adults?
I think there's just so much unlearning to be done.
Yeah.
So many more experiences to, sift through and rearrange. The child doesn't have all that experience to work through.
Yeah.
Plus, there's probably something.
Luckily, at least we're not doomed like we thought we were.
Yeah.
Like when I was in school, I learned that at least in college, it was like the brain doesn't change after a certain age. Like that was the dogma.
Right.
Thank God we at least know better than that now.
I think a lot of it maybe too is like a child's brain is still changing a lot. And it's just whatever mechanisms are driving that changing, they can change out of pain so much faster. It's really cool.
Yeah. That was my thought thread there. I was like, oh, maybe they have more built-in neuroplasticity because they haven't gone through their massive neural prunings yet. But there's still hope for us yet.
And then we come to the 5th and final stage, which is cultivating positive feelings and sensations.
What do you think of that one?
You got to replace the pain with something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to give people too many models. At Lin and kind of helping form the clinical program and the 12 different modules and 4 areas they fall in, we kind of took the work and divided it into 4 sections. Understanding pain and recovery, which is kind of that pain neuroscience and evidence building, kind of steps 1 and 2. Relating differently to pain and sensations. Understanding thoughts and emotions that increase pain. And then the last one is replacing pain with the good in life. And I wish they'd expand upon what their 5th one says a bit, because I really do think this is like the step everybody misses. They're like, I'm doing everything. I'm doing it perfectly. I understand it. I'm trying to change my thoughts. I'm doing emotions. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What does your day look like? I'm just trying to get out of pain, man. You're like, whoa. What a danger alarm that your system is getting all day. I have this Post-it. I sometimes will make my members draw a circle and fill in this circle how much of their day they spent doing things around pain, like thinking about it, doing a practice to try to get out of it, focusing, like learning. And I make them do it like over a week or 2. And people are often like horrified how dark the circle is for how much time they spend around it. So
it's like in some ways you got to give up on the idea that you have something to fix and just go live your life.
How did you do that?
I don't know. I approached this in a weird way. At some point, that's a good question. I think making those changes in like career and other things like that, I was getting to doing the things I enjoyed, doing the things I wanted to do. And, my pain had already diminished before then, but that was really what took it the rest of the way. And again, I never connected it to pain, but that reduction in pain further allowed me to do even more things that I wanted to be doing without worry of, is this going to hurt my back? Is this going to put me in bed for 3 days afterward? And that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
I guess the pain wasn't conceptually the thing stopping me necessarily, but in a big way, I was going and doing stuff to replace that with.
yep, totally. I think this looked a lot of ways for me. In a microcosm way, like I got down on a yoga mat and, I was told crunches were bad for my back, so don't do them. And I was in this class and I was like, all right, what if they weren't? Like, what if I could just explore my body and see how it moves and not freak out when I feel a twinge in my back? Like, what if I could still move? And I did, and it became this like explorative. The teacher was like, "What is that girl doing over there?" But I just went for it. And it's kind of explorative movement where I was just challenging and feeling different sensations in my body, pushing my arm here, my elbow there, looking a different way, or having a different thought as I did it. And in that class of kind of like having this embodied experience of like, crunches don't need to hurt if I interact with them differently. And do I even really want to do a crunch? It kind of just like blew things open where I could then apply that to dance. Like, dance always hurt my sacroiliac joint, right on the right side on the top, and then this spot, right when I did it. Like, what if I just tried different dance and I tried interacting with it different ways, and I stopped trying to be a professional dancer? I got back to like why I even enjoyed it in the first place, right? Like when I was walking into the class, like, is this going to hurt or not? Of course it's going to hurt because I'm focusing on every moment. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Does it hurt? But when I could go in and I found things like, contact improv and other improvisational dance and Afro Haitian dance and I don't know, all this acrobatic stuff, I just threw everything up and took the pressure off and sought out fun first and foremost and just movement and enjoying my body. It all went away. Just so annoying. It's like, give it up to get it. And then, I got in a professional dance company and decided I didn't even want to be in it because I found this more fun thing, which was just dancing because I wanted to dance.
Interesting. I think too, looking back at myself, I think my stubbornness kind of launched a lot of that. One of my favorite things to do then was like hiking, and I always limited what I did because I was actually told I shouldn't be doing that, carrying a heavy pack and running around up and down hills was a bad idea. But once that pain started to go away, like, I'm going to go do it anyway because I want to. What does the doctor know? I'm going to go do it anyway. And I went and did it. And it's like, it wasn't a huge problem. It's like, wow. And that kind of opened my eyes to maybe I can do more. Maybe I can do more.
It's crazy to which we let the words of other people limit our lives.
Yeah, definitely.
How could they know our body better than us? And yet we let them.
Yeah. And
we believe them.
The whole idea, I was told, like, we put these metal parts in your spine, but you're somehow fragile now. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Totally. What's your reframe around the metal parts in your body?
I look at it now like I got the upgrade. It's stronger than it was before.
I love it.
It's titanium.
Yeah, you're like Iron
stronger
Man.
Than bone, right?
Yeah.
Why should I be worried?
Titanium Man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the rough outline of the process. Obviously, the details are different for everybody, and that's why it's so hard to say this is what you do. It's not like following a recipe or a checklist. It's a lot of trial and error, figuring out what those details are for each person.
Yeah. Maybe my quick summary, now that we've gone through it, would be understanding why you're not broken, practicing the belief that you're not broken, and then getting back to living your life. or forward to living your life.
Yeah.
Because when you try to get back, it doesn't quite work because you're different and your pain didn't have nothing to teach you, you know?
I've noticed that a lot of times is people reach that point where they have to decide, what is my life going to be now? And that's really hard.
1000%. I think that's where those like tow truck questions from Lin come in, like the hard questions that you're like, look, you might not like me for asking this question, but this could be the question that changes your life.
Yeah.
You had something to gain from pain. I'm not saying you do. What would it be? This pain was serving a purpose. What would it be? If this pain was replacing something that you didn't want or were afraid of, what would it be? Do you have any other favorites in that category?
I kind of frame it a lot of times like this is one of the toughest parts of the process, but it's the most important. Like,
Yeah.
you get to redefine everything. You get to redefine your life and decide what it is you want out of it. And there's kind of two options at that point. You can go back to pain, which we know you don't want because you're here, or you could go where you want to go. And you might not know where that is, but there's joy and there's fun in figuring that out. Just go try something, you know?
What did you move into when you decided to try something? That you kind of walked away from the work you were in? And
I think in a big way, I moved towards, I always wanted to make a positive difference in the world. And, I thought for a time I could do that as an engineer and do all these cool things, but I realized I'm just making more crap no one needs. And then I moved into health and safety for a while, thinking, oh, that'll give me some purpose. I realized, yeah, it's all corporate politics more than anything. I won't get into that, but and that's where I found kind of coaching. It's like, yeah, this gives me purpose. I'm making a difference in people's lives. It's positive. That's, sometimes quite profound. And at the end of the day, I feel good about it. And that's what I was searching for all along. So,
yeah, I think people get discouraged when that first step doesn't feel like that last step you just described, right? Like, well, I went and I tried and I went to the first volunteer thing and I hated it and I walked out. Oh, are you viewing that whole thing as a failure? Because I view that you took a first step and it's probably going to take more than one.
yeah, you learned something along the way.
Yeah.
Rarely do we get it right the first go.
Yeah. I feel like what I had to, like my tow truck stuff that I realize in retrospect now was like, around like herpes and an STD and like, having this deadly illness that I didn't know if I could give to other people and like not getting answers. I had to ask, like, would I rather be in pain or would I rather be vulnerable and tell people what's going on and see if they still love me? Like, that's what it became in my relationship. Like, bless my husband, I didn't tell him about why I had meningitis until I got it during our relationship. And I was like, oh, I forgot to tell you, this is related to that STD I did already tell you about, but I was just so scared. And it was a moment of like, wow, will he leave me if I say this? So it was just always my biggest fear. Obviously, you don't give the meningitis form. There is no meningitis form of herpes. It's just how it manifested in my body, as it could in everybody's body. I just have a special body. But I didn't know that then. So it just felt so risky and vulnerable. And I had to make the decision, like, would I rather be in pain or like risk having my heart broken, but being honest and truthful? And I chose the honest and truthful. And that's like the biggest change I had in my pain was going that route.
You could see how some people might choose pain in that situation.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And all I try to do in coaching is get people to the point where they can make that decision. Like, cool, got it. You'd rather be in pain than tell your wife that you cheated. That's your decision. You understand it now. This is that's for you,
Yeah. It's in their hands at that point.
I work in pelvic pain, so that's the first example I went to.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
So I think, obviously we talked about a lot, but again, I can't reaffirm enough that the individual details of, what practices are we utilizing, what tools are we using, it's so different to every person. And there's an immense amount of options out there, right?
Yeah. What do you think would be beneficial for people to hear about? Some of what the tools are, or
maybe we could
common
talk
pitfalls
about
people have?
some of the underlying themes of a lot of the tools. So, for example, I think like there's an underlying kind of tone of mindfulness for a lot of things. Not necessarily like sit on the floor meditation type mindfulness, but mindfulness as far as paying attention to what's happening in our body and what that might mean, what that might be telling us, kind of that paying attention, right?
Yeah. Why do you think meditation alone is not enough to heal chronic pain? Or do you think that? I felt that in my own experience. Couldn't meditate my way out of it.
Some people it might be. I've heard people say, some people, that I just started meditating and my pain went away.
I'm not a lucky one.
Yeah. I think it depends on what the variables are for you that are driving your pain. If those are like you're not able to disconnect from, the stimulus response kind of cycle we're always in, maybe meditation would be extremely powerful for you. But if it's something more like, I don't know, like kind of what you and I both described, meditation is probably not enough. It might help, sure, but
yeah. For me, I think it's that when I'd sit there meditating, when the sensations of back pain or headache, whatever arose in my body, I still thought they were really dangerous. So sure, I could let those thoughts go, but there was no safety around them. It was like letting dangerous thoughts go over and over. There was no like reappraisal. Like, actually, I'm okay.
yeah.
I'm deeply okay right now.
And I know I myself use meditation quite a lot. It was actually one of the bigger tools I used. But again, I wasn't focusing on the pain. I was focusing on other things like emotions and things like that. Had I focused on the pain with meditation, I don't know if I would have got the same result.
Obviously, just sat there and stared at it. Are you going to go away if I meditate? Yeah. So mindfulness is one theme kind of the tools. I guess I'm a PT. Do you have an idea of what the other themes would be? Have you thought this through before?
Yeah, I think there's some other themes around the nervous system, for example, that getting out of fight or flight into that rest and digest for some people is pretty powerful.
I'd say like behavioral changes, I think is one for me. And it gets into kind of challenging triggers, but it also gets into like graded exposure and getting back to movement. Like when I described being on the ground and questioning the danger of a crunch and then starting to move with this right mindset and a mindful mindset of like, well, what if I do this way? I mean, the guys from Australia, their entire thing is pain neuroscience education and graded exposure. That's like that's all they do. So they kind of return to movement in this graded safety appraising way is super important.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it for a lot of folks. Just what have you learned to not do over time because of pain, and getting back to doing those things. A lot of the
1,000%.
predictive coding we were talking about earlier, undoing some of that.
And then there's totally a theme of like joy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that's the right word, but it's that whole like, realizing there's more in life than pain.
Yeah.
And how it's like widening the telescope to everything else that's going on and taking those paths towards joy.
Yeah. It's like you're recalibrating kind of that baseline level of internal arousal and what direction it's taking you. I always think of like in a moment where you're really frustrated and stressed out and you stub your toe on the coffee table. It's the worst thing to ever happen to you in that moment, versus when you stub your toe on the coffee table on a great day, everything's going perfect and you're really happy, and it's like, no big deal.
Totally. I watch it in my 2-year-old daughter all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's how pain works.
Right.
It's so obvious to see.
Definitely.
When you're distressed, it's worse. When you're
Right.
doing well, it's not as bad.
It almost
I don't even notice
feels
that you laugh.
sometimes. It almost feels like sometimes that stuff happens more often when you're frustrated.
Yeah.
So I often wonder, like, we frame all this stuff around pain, but is it really about pain?
No.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it is about pain at all. Pain's just what brings people to the work.
Yeah. In your pain, there is your life. I truly see it as a teacher. I truly see it as the messenger of the work that you have to do in front of you.
Yeah.
Some people are like, no. Give me a surgery. I'm like, okay. If it doesn't work, I'll be here.
So that brings us to our second break. Stay tuned, folks, because there's still a whole lot more. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to Esoteric Wellness. Coming into the second half of the show now, so we'll just jump right back into the interview with Tara King. So that's kind of the process we talked through. Would you want to talk a little bit more at all about Lin Health and kind of how that approach is, what Lin Health is, what they do, that kind of thing? Let's promote Lin a little bit here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I ended up here because I wish it's what I'd had when I was in chronic pain. So Lin Health takes a nervous system first approach to pain recovery. It doesn't look at pain management or pain coping, or you're just going to have to live with this like the typical medical model of pain does. But it compiles and teaches in a nice organized format all these concepts that we have been talking about. We work with different insurance providers or different pain clinics, different referring providers, and either that referring provider ideally kind of does this diagnostic rule out for you. We'll say that's not always perfect because they aren't our doctors, or you come through your insurance and you do meet with a Lin Health Medical Group doctor and you get that kind of diagnostic rule out. That's that kind of step 2 in the process we talked about. And then you work with a pain recovery coach. And I don't know about you, but my favorite thing about coaching is that I'm never the same with two people. No two paths are alike. Um, there's a general program of 12 different modules revolving around kind of the four themes I said earlier. But what comes first and what's most important for that person, and what path we walk and what practices or techniques we focus on are really individualized based on the person that comes in. Coaches have a variety of backgrounds. I've brought in all my favorite pelvic floor physical therapists. Some are former chiropractors, others are health and wellness coaches, some are nurses, some are MDs, actually. And we've had a few psychologists or psychotherapists or social workers come through as well. But I think that all of us end up here because it feels like the missing piece in the, I will say, treatment rather than management of pain. Like, we even just hired this one former nurse from the Mayo Clinic, and she used to work in the fibromyalgia program there. And she was like, this is what's missing. This is what I've been wanting. And we tried, and it just wasn't happening there. And we're happy to work partnered with the Mayo Fibro program right now, and offer that missing piece. And even the Mayo Clinic was like, well, what's different? What's different? Like, we treat chronic pain. What's different about this? And I say, well, we don't believe that people are broken. Like, we believe this can be unlearned rather than just like coped with or managed. And I think that's what makes the difference, along with just kind of the accountability of having, weekly calls and messaging with a coach and being able to troubleshoot things. To me, it just feels like the personalization and somebody really getting to know you and take the time to understand your story, and then actually practice techniques with you instead of kind of signing a script and sending you on your way. I think that's what makes a difference. What did I miss? What would you add?
I think another aspect that I've heard people talk about is like the speed with which you can start working with a coach. Like a matter of days, typically, right? I've literally had people come in and they're like, well, this was faster to get into than the pain management clinic, so I thought I'd try this first.
We got some people in the same day. We try to get everybody started within 4 days. So yeah, as long as the referral is in, I guess I would say that's really the only thing that holds it up.
Right. That's super fast in healthcare to get anything.
I know. I was trying to even like get an appointment with different pain psychology centers just to like learn from them. And they all have like a 3 or 4 month wait list, or kind of the top doc or psychologist there doesn't take people anymore. So yeah, I also say we're pretty darn accessible, and it's really nice to take insurance. I mean, not all states and not all health plans, but the fact that we've been expanding insurance coverage and that it is paying for a lot of people's plans are paying in part for this type of service is like, and that's why I'm here now. Just like I thought we should have learned about how pain could be a messenger of something else in preschool, and that will be like my next life mission. I believe that this should just be a part of our existing healthcare system instead of something you have to pay. I don't know how much you paid trying to get out of pain, but I paid definitely upwards of $20,000 if I don't include physical therapy school. So it's important to me that it's affordable to get out of pain.
Yeah, accessibility is definitely an issue for a lot of folks. But yeah, I can't help but to imagine a day in the future where, yeah, we're taught this in preschool. Everybody knows this is how pain works.
My daughter always comes up to me like with an owie, and I go, I see that. That is so great. Your body has already started healing it. And I know one day she's just going to be like, will you stop saying that? That's so nice. I'm just trying to plant the seeds. Like, we get hurt and we heal. And that's something that you can actually count on.
I know my family is tired of me talking about it.
She's 2, so she can't talk back yet.
Yeah. My wife will say, I have a headache, or I'm like, take a deep breath. You're fine. Shut up.
Totally. My husband will come now like, I have this neck thing. I know you're going to say it's from work. Actually, I do think it is from work. Can we talk about it? Sure.
Yeah, it's still challenging for people to accept when you start talking about pain in a way that's totally different from their current understanding.
Do you know my dad went through Lin Health?
Did he?
Yep. Back when we had an annual membership, he was one of the first people to buy it. He ghosted his coach for the first 3 months, showed up for like 2 calls, met Charlie once and was like, I'm healed. We were like, are you kidding me? Of your chronic back pain? Like, what? He was like, yeah, no, I get it. I'm fine. Oh, I tried to explain this to you so many times. I was so worried about explaining, and it just, I asked him what clicked, and it was really the pain neuroscience education. It was seeing the like Brinjiki et al. Study of how there could be so many individuals who are asymptomatic with the exact same imaging findings as he had. And it was like, oh, well, if they don't have pain, then I don't have to either. And that was enough.
Sounds
annoying, right?
So let's talk a little bit about the coaching experience, that side of the process. Let me ask you this question. Do you ever feel like you know what you're doing?
Yeah. And no.
That's what I expected you to say.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I think the only person who could really know is the individual, right? Like I can't know your way out of pain. Only you can. And at the same time, after doing this for a few years now, I do feel like I recognize patterns or will get like an intuitive feeling of like, oof, I really do feel like I need to ask this question. And in that sense of like finding the right tool or question or next step, I would say yes. But do I know this exact person in front of me's path out of pain? Absolutely not. Only they can.
Yeah. I find myself cycling between, yeah, I've got this figured out. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then the next session is a reality check. I think, I don't know what I'm doing at all. I think that's just coaching in general. I mean, so much of it's outside of your control anyway. I mean, you're just learning with this other person in a lot of ways. Sometimes you get it wrong.
I think what gives me like hope and empowerment in that is I mean, I'm a physical therapist and I just, not to hate on physical therapy, but I just felt pain getting so mistreated all around me. So when I see that, I'm like, what we're doing is 1,000 times better. Like we're at least saying true information around things and not saying, you're misaligned, so you're in pain, and then you need to strengthen this. Like at least what we're doing is evidence-based at this point. Not that all of PT isn't, but when it comes to pain, like pain is just not an issue with the tissues, like so many medical practices treat it like it is. So I think what gives me empowerment in the non-knowing is just knowing that it's the next best right thing right now for pain.
Yeah. And not that, not having the right answer in every session. It's not like a problem. It's not like a hurtful thing. I mean, you'll figure it out the next one, or it's just, there's a lot of trial and error involved in this. And sometimes you knock it out of the park first go, and sometimes it takes a little longer.
I think some things I've missed have been like when somebody had some other big medical condition going on that they just like hadn't told me about, or there's a medication that they're on and a side effect from that, or they didn't take it, or somehow it was really related to a flare in like a big way. Both of those have really thrown me off. And also when I've just missed like a really big emotional trigger in their life. It's like, wait, what? How did we leave that part out? That's the Death Star, you know? That's the most important thing here. How did we just get here? Okay.
Definitely. What is your favorite aspect of doing this work?
Oh, watching people light up with the new lives that they're claiming for themselves. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like even in the smallest ways, especially the longer they've been in pain, just like seeing them change in a way that they never thought that they could, and just seeing what sparks of hope look like for someone, it's like the best thing ever. I think if other healthcare practitioners could see that, everybody would do this work.
Yeah, it's super rewarding, and once you experience that, it's like, I want more of that. I want more of that. I don't know if it's addictive or what, but it's so amazing to witness somebody that when you first meet them, they have no hope. And then they go to having hope, and then they go to actual improvement, and then they're out doing things they never thought they could in a matter of months.
I know. And you say that and like people won't believe you.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay. That's not, it happens. It's just so nuts. What's so crazy is that it's possible and it's like nobody knows about it, I guess. That people would like doubt that it's possible is the craziest part to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you tell them things like that up front, and they're like, I don't believe you at all. You're crazy.
Yeah. I think it helps that we've like been through it, right?
Definitely.
That like, you know, I don't have those symptoms anymore. Like I will get acute headaches or neck aches, and it's so obviously related to an event in my life. I can just kind of talk to the event in my emotional system, and it fades like every time. Like it really is just kind of a help. It's just my tell, you know, like, oh, gotten stressed. I don't like this situation. Okay. Now I know what I can do that'll actually resolve this instead of, you know, pills or ice pack or whatever.
Very similar to how I look at mine now. It's like, I'm thankful it's there when it does show up, because it's reminding me of something I need to pay attention to. It's like, hey, you're not managing your stress well. You should probably focus on that.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes you're like, aren't we past this? Don't you not give this to me when I don't manage stress well? It's like, no, I'm not going to like go away. There's still reason for me here. Yeah. It's like how, you know, people without pain like die young, you know, it's like there is still a purpose.
Definitely.
Our purpose is just evolved of our pain, I feel like.
Yeah. We have a more advanced sense of pain.
There we go. I'm so good at pain processing, let me tell you.
What would you say is the most challenging aspect?
I think there's a lot, honestly. I think because I'm in a more like operational place, I see all of the most challenging cases that come through Lin from like an escalation standpoint. On a personal coaching with members level, when people are so obsessed with whether their pain is structural or neuroplastic, I find it really challenging. And that's kind of why I said earlier, like, so there's nothing wrong with me. You really think there's nothing wrong with me? I say, no, there are a lot of changes that have happened in your body. Like, stop this dichotomy of like, there's something wrong with me or there's not. You're in a body, it heals, it has neural pathways. Chronic pain creates different neural pathways, and you can uncreate them. And those are all facts. Like those are all facts. And within all of that, there's not really room for the argument of like, do I have neuroplastic pain or do I not? And yet I find so many individuals who are the most stuck are just stuck in that. And it's almost like that problem is taking up all their mind and all their energy that they could be devoting towards like doing the work. So I find that a challenge. When there are significant psychosocial barriers, economic, environmental barriers to individuals finding like a true internal sense of safety, or like a trauma background where a true sense of safety is very hard for somebody. Clearly, I'm not a psychotherapist. I say all the time, psychotherapy is just not very accessible in our country in the way that people need it to be. And while the Alan Gordon camp and pain reprocessing therapy will say you don't have to go back into your past trauma to heal it in order to improve at this work, there are certain individuals that do just have such a nonsense of safety that it feels beyond the scope of my coaching, at least, in order to help. So that's tough, right? We're caring people. And when the care we have to give isn't, what somebody needs.
Yeah. And what I would say is kind of along what you just said, but in a different way, is like so much of these people's healing is out of our control. We're here to help them and facilitate that, but at the end of the day, they have to do it. And when they're not doing it for whatever reason, it's hard not to feel like, as a coach, like I've let them down somehow. Like I'm not doing my job well enough. And while that's not true, because we care, it's tough.
Totally. Yeah. Another, I don't want to say too much on what's hard, but I'll say another type that's hard is just kind of individuals who have a negative spin on everything and are really just stuck in that negative spiral. And those are the type of people you end up trying to do a lot of the work for, and you can't do the work for them, right? And it gets really hard and you want to, because they spin everything to negative and you feel like you got to spin it to positive. But they have to find their way out, right? You can only teach things and provide trail options, and it's really theirs to walk down.
Right. Yeah, it's tough in that way for sure. How has doing this work, or does doing this work, help or hurt your own pain?
Oh my gosh, I was going to ask you the same thing. Both. Honestly. Yeah. I don't like working with individuals with head pain because I do have very sensitized neural pathways. I even can guide somebody through a somatic tracking practice, and I'll ask where it moved, and I'll already feel where it moved in my own body. I am I don't quantum entanglement, who knows, something, but I am really sensitive.
Sure.
So I don't like working with individuals who have a similar story to me. I'm working with somebody right now. Sorry if she's listening to this, but she had meningitis and then developed 8 years of headaches, and they matched her with me. And I was like, I don't want to work with this. Other people would see it as an exorcism of sorts, but I like to kind of protect that energy. But I've been working with her for a while, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It helps me in the sense that I love leading practices during session, because when we lead a practice, we get to partake in it. It was how teaching yoga was so healing for me for so many years, because when I taught the class, I also was in that state with everybody the whole time. So it's kind of keeping yourself accountable to be able to hold that space for others. So I do see it as a practice that's in my arsenal, if you will, of, let's say, treasure chest of pain recovery tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think of it like it's a matter of perspective. If you zoom in too close, it can often look like it's making my pain worse. Like you said, you get those members with very similar symptoms. It stirs things up. But I also look at it like if you zoom out and think about it in the big picture, I see it as very helpful because it's stirring things up because I still have work to do. And it's helping me identify where that work is. While it's uncomfortable and kind of annoying sometimes, it's helping progress my own process. Probably
I
much
completely
faster
agree.
than it would otherwise.
The first time I ever told my story, I was on a Lin Health webinar and I got a raging headache and neck ache after it. And I was like shaking after. And I was like, whoa, I have a nervous system reaction and a pain reaction to telling my meningitis story. Like, this is work I have to do.
Yeah.
And I actually went to EMDR for like medical trauma and my experience being in the hospital and all this stuff. And like, I just, it's been an hour and a half. I have no symptoms. I'm not shaking, right? Like I tell my story. That was my goal at the end of it. Like, I want to be able to tell my story without having this reaction in me. So that showed up as something to heal. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I will work on healing, talking to people about head pain.
Yeah.
When I want.
The work is hard and it's always easier to say, I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
But this is stirring it up and it's like, here you go, work with this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, but it's like so good at the same time, like a run. Like I don't like running, but I usually feel really good after it. Like it's like a workout. You're like, I don't want to do it, but this is good for me.
Definitely.
The same with this stuff.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. So chronic pain is like one of the fastest growing chronic conditions out there right now. Let's maybe dig into why that might be. Lots of reasons, I'm sure.
That's such a great question. What do you think?
I think it's a lot of different reasons all coming together, but I think one of the bigger reasons probably is that we're always engaged in something, this stimulus response, we're just reacting to things all day long. We carry around these rectangular devices that are constantly making demands of us. Exactly. And we never disconnect. And we never give our nervous system a chance to relax and a lot of that stuff, and kind of what the things that are stimulating us all the time, like, turn on the TV, look at the news. It's always something scary and negative. And we're bombarding our brains with messages that we're in danger all the time. So of course our brains are going to become more protective, right?
Building on that, like a loss of community. I think
Definitely,
that's something that like is so evolutionarily innate, like this feeling of I belong, right? And COVID was one, massive event that changed so many systems for us. But like even before then, like with digital communities, our sense of belonging has changed. And I don't know if it will change into being some, like metaverse where we do feel a sense of connection, but it's different than what we knew as children and as what we evolved to be. So I think just like lack of social connection and community and feeling like you belong and you're held, right? Like we don't have extended families in this country. I also in a major way, just think it's the current pain paradigm that we're in the United States. Like other countries, like how Sweden doesn't have like whiplash, right? After people get in car
Yeah.
accidents.
Isn't that
Like
interesting?
there is a cultural, yeah, it's nuts. It's like there is a cultural like narrative that we've gone into around like our back when we get older, like our backs hurt and we need knee replacements and we need hip replacements and we're going to need all this stuff. And we're in a narrative in our medical system that creates pain and creates chronic pain and worsens it once you have it, unfortunately. So I think the main reason is our cultural narrative around pain, perpetuating more pain. And then the children watch their parents in pain. And
there's almost this expectation that as you get older, you should be in some kind of pain.
Exactly. If your dad has a bad back, you'll have a bad back.
Yeah. And we see people,
like half
older
my family,
people who are not in pain. You're like, they're weird. They stand out somehow.
They got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a freak of nature. That lucky them.
Yeah. I mean, I think like rising anxiety as well, right? Kind of like what you said, just the general sense of unease and danger lately
Just
in American culture.
A different manifestation of the same thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally. I mean, unlearn your pain or unlearn your anxiety, depression, or have the same workbook of Howard Schupner's books.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure. And I think, like you mentioned, the social connection, that's why I think like podcasting is so popular. Because
that's why I agreed to do this with you too.
These long form conversations that we don't have anymore in our culture, or you just sit around and talk and see where it goes. Most of our conversations are transactional anymore.
Totally. Yeah. Even when you go into a public place where you're like, oh, I'm going out to be social, like it's hard to meet people still. People are on their phones or they're like, I met this one person here. That's what I'm doing right now. Like I'm with this person. And there's just less of that feeling of we're all here and we're all hanging out here.
Yeah. Not long ago, my wife and I went to a bar. I was like, everyone's on their phone. This is different.
Totally. I don't have great cell phone service everywhere where I live, and I love it.
Yeah.
I've always been someone who doesn't get back to people that fast. It's been hard to hold on to that lately. The expectation of getting back is increasing.
Yeah. I was doing some reading too on the kind of the prevalence of anxiety in younger people. And a lot of it's because that social learning in early childhood has been stripped away in many ways. Parents don't trust their neighbors. They don't let their kids out go play like, we used to. Our parents would kick us out of the house during the day. Go play outside. Go away. That doesn't happen much
I wasn't
anymore.
allowed to come in until dinner time.
Right.
Like I have younger half siblings who are a lot younger than me. And they'll say like, well, what are we supposed to do? And it's like, I don't think I ever asked that during my childhood. Like, hey, we're bored.
Yeah.
Oh, you're bored. How did that neural pathway get in your head? What happened for that pathway to be there? That just being is boring. Yeah.
It's So I think that's probably a lot to do with why so many kids are having chronic pain nowadays. I think that was something pretty rare not that long ago.
Yeah. I know. So we just need to get into school, get this curriculum, have like a month long in summer where nobody gets technology. No, right? Technology is not the enemy. It's just how we interact with it.
Yeah. It's a tool. It's a matter of how you use it, like anything else. If you could change like one thing that might have the biggest impact about our culture, society, education, whatever it might be.
I just want everybody to know that they're loved and to feel loved. I
In a
don't think
way
I
that
could change that.
that sounds small, but I'm sure that would have a profound effect.
I just think at the root of so many, I mean, Ram Dass's like guru said to him, love everybody and tell the truth. And I just think that's like the best message there ever is. And I think if people felt loved, a lot of things would change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've even kind of described this process at a very high level as learning to go from living in fear to living in love. Like, that's what it's all
I love
about.
that. Totally. Which is like an awesome process, right?
Right.
That's why the journey can be a gift. Like, wouldn't you like to go on that journey? Wouldn't you like to go from fear to love? Yeah.
Sounds all
I
right
had
to
this one
me.
member I worked with. Yeah, I worked with my first member I ever worked with. I worked with for quite some time. One day she was like, this is about like living a way better life and becoming a way better person, isn't it? And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me. They got it,
Yeah. It really is in so many ways. There's so many benefits beyond just improving your pain or getting free of pain. I mean, it's really about changing how you live your life in so many ways.
Totally. But I don't tell people that at this point.
No, that's quite intimidating. I think it would be. Let them learn along the way.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our final break. So stay tuned, everyone, for the conclusion of our interview. And welcome back to Esoteric Wellness. Second segment of the second hour. Coming to you now. We'll jump right back into our interview with Tara King. So let's go a little bit out there, into the realm of speculation a little bit. We like to be in the comfort of science and what's known and understood, but let's leave our comfort zone a little bit. So we kind of just mentioned like zooming out, looking at this process is just like learning how to live a better life. I mean, do you see any connection between kind of what we're describing and more of like spiritual practices or more esoteric type practices?
Yeah. At least for myself. I don't know about others. But I love Ram Dass and went on several retreats before he passed. And it was a huge part of my healing journey, like massive. And I asked him at one point, like, I can leave things behind, but what if they don't leave me? Like, I can let go of pain, but pain doesn't let go of me. He like looked at me and he just goes, pain, it's the schmooze, which is like this word that he uses to say just kind of like the distractions and kind of like the extra stuff of life. Like it's the, don't worry about that. Like that's not love land. Like that's not who you really are. That's not what it's all really about. Like it's just, in Portuguese, they say like, deixa pra lá, like leave it over there. And just, later in his life after his strokes, he didn't have a lot of words because he had expressive aphasia. He had aphasia.
I don't remember.
And it was just like, oh, pain is the schmooze. Got it. Like, that's how I could view it in this whole like spiritual journey in life. Like, it's just, I don't know. It becomes one of those things I can't put words on.
Yeah.
When I enter the spiritual realm.
Sure. It's just the noise, the schmooze. I love that.
The schmooze.
What a privilege to talk to Ram Dass too. I mean, that must have been amazing. So I know for me, this kind of spiritual approach was the intention I had in approaching a lot of this stuff I was doing. And some of that was driven by experiences with psychedelics and that, but this kind of yearning to figure out what spirituality meant to me was the driving force for me personally to go on this journey and just happen to leave my pain behind in the process. And when we kind of talk about what the process is, it's like aligned with so many esoteric ideas that, as you bring order to the internal chaos, your external world becomes ordered as well. Moving from fear to love, like we said. And that's an idea that's not new. It's been around for a long, long time. And now we're kind of backing that up with neuroscience. And that's super interesting to me.
Yeah. I really would have been all the way there with just spirituality, but I needed to hear that I wasn't actually diseased in the way I thought I was. Otherwise, it really got me almost all the way there. I accidentally fell into yoga trying to heal my body and like my dancer's body. And it opened up like this whole world of spirituality I'd kind of left behind after a Catholic upbringing and being really upset at the church and not really getting how to move forward, even though I had this like sense of God. Like I always did since a young age. And I was like, well, that's not quite it. That's not exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It sounds simple, but for me, it's really all love. And there's this one East Forest Ram Dass song compilation, and in it he says, like, I love my pain, I love my wheelchair. I was like, you can say you love your pain. Whoa. What is it like to be able to love everything? And like that question took me to like, oh, maybe this whole thing could be different than I thought it was.
Wow. I've noticed, and I'm curious if you have as well, like in the process of working with people in chronic pain, their internal world is chaos. It's nothing but fear. It's a mess in many ways. I've noticed many times their outer world is a mess as well. Like it's a never-ending stream of catastrophes. Like, how is this person so unlucky?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, some of it's how they're communicating it and catastrophizing it, of course. But it's like, it's things that aren't happening to other people at that frequency, right?
Yep.
And as they progress and calm down the internal world, their outer world also matches. Good things start happening to them. No more catastrophes are happening. And this idea of as within, so without. I mean, is that something that you have noticed?
I was that person.
You were that person. Okay.
I was that person. I was that person at 23 who had a broken scaphoid bone and they're, cast on, driving to the appointment to get it off, and would hit a car at a red light, just rolling, and then ran out of gas 4 blocks later. Like that was a day in the life of young Tara. So like I was that person. Do you know like the double slit experiment?
Yeah.
of like quantum mechanics.
Yep.
I was just saying this with someone I was coaching yesterday. Like how the presence of an observer collapses reality into like a state.
Mhm.
I feel like that's what happens. Taking a quantum physics concept and applying it in probably a misapplied way. But I think that that's what happens when you're in like a chaotic internal state, and how it makes your outer worlds match. Like, and how when you're in pain, you get in more pain. Like you create what you observe. And if all you're observing is pain, all you're going to get is more pain. Like you're collapsing reality back into pain. When you're chaotic, you make everything around you chaotic because your presence affects that which is in front of you all the time. Like I affect you right now. You affect me right now. You're not in a bubble. So, I mean, I think that was really the biggest part of my healing journey, was literally changing how I was in the world.
Yeah, it's definitely something I've noticed, and it's like, sure, we could probably explain a lot of it just by behavior, decisions you make, are creating chaos or order in your world based on what you're doing and deciding, and how you're affecting other people around you. I'm sure that's at play. And then there's this idea of this more mystical, kind of magical, are we manifesting our own reality in a way? Science isn't there yet, obviously, but it is interesting to consider. And
Oh yeah. The last From retreat I went on before he passed, I went in asking about manifestation to everyone. I was like obsessed with it. Like, is this something we should do? Is it taking away just kind of like the spiritual flow of the universe? Like, is it me getting in the way of what could be if I'm trying to manifest things? And people were like, girl, you got a lot of questions. We don't know.
Oh, yeah, interesting to think about for sure. And yeah, we don't have an answer, but it's a trend I've noticed time and time again. That,
Yeah.
your life gets better in so many ways.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting, like, sometimes when we get in that chaotic internal state, like it's a defense mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily like a choice. Like there's a reason why we jump from one thing to another, or, are never satisfied, or blah, 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 blah. And coming less esoterically.
Sure.
That's, I think, an important part of the process to recognize too.
Definitely. It's not all your fault, right?
No. What if the way you responded was the best way you had available to you at that time in your life? Now you have a choice to respond differently.
Yeah. Like, yes, your actions, your behaviors, your choices played a role, but it's not like you made one bad choice and here we are. And a lot of it's due to processes going on without your knowledge, without your conscious awareness. So, last question. Do you see this kind of approach, similar approaches, useful for other health conditions beyond just pain?
Yeah. Literally, I see it.
Yeah.
And then I've also heard it. I mean, when I took the PRT course most recently, they said they wanted to change it to like symptom reprocessing therapy. It could really be just kind of any uncomfortable symptom or sensation. Certainly like dermatology, I think, interests me the most. Like eczema and chronic skin conditions. Gosh, some people I interview for coaching at Lin too have like applied this to just so many odd symptoms, right? I mean, even like, yeah, I can't tell people stories that aren't mine to tell is actually how I feel about that.
Sure.
But I guess I'll say like I thought it was just about pain, and I'm realizing it's more just about like uncomfortable symptoms in your body. I do believe the body can choose any symptom it wants. I think allergies is a really, really interesting one that showed up in myself. When I get stressed, my tongue itches now. It's very odd. And if I calm down, it goes away.
Interesting. I've been playing around with allergies myself.
Really? Ugh. Yeah. And then also anxiety.
Sure.
I think it's kind
And
of
I
the same
know,
process people use.
you know, at Lin, even we see a number of things beyond pain
Mhm.
that, you know, have success. As a health coach, I've kind of employed a lot of these things towards like chronic disease,
I was gonna say autoimmune conditions. Like
autoimmunity,
I don't make
definitely.
that claim, right? But I've seen it.
Right.
And I can't promise for an individual. But if you have an incurable condition, why would you not try like a symptom reprocessing approach?
Something with zero negative side effects.
Yeah.
What's the risk?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's kind of how I frame it. There's like no clinical evidence that this will or does, but that's only because it hasn't been researched yet.
Yeah. Like if I sat around publishing case studies all day and that was my life, I could make a case study about all
Sure.
these, you know, but too busy doing the work.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think we're going to continue to discover use cases for it where it's beneficial. In time, the research just needs to be done, and
Totally.
it's happening in a lot of ways. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm most hopeful about endometriosis, I will say. To throw that out there in case any listener has endometriosis. Super painful pelvic condition as a pelvic floor PT. I'm really interested to see how many individuals who have diagnosed endometriosis that this
I
can
have
help with.
worked with one client who had endometriosis, and we used a lot of these techniques with some positive change. It's probably a little early on to say definitively what's working and what's not, but they're seeing improvement in their pain. So,
Yeah. The nervous system's involved in all pain, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So there's never not an opportunity to work the nervous system.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it has to affect everything to some degree, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, we are out of time. So thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. Um, I'm a little sad Megan wasn't able to join us today, but she's got a lot of chaos at work right now. So that didn't work
Yeah.
out. But thank
Yeah.
you again.
It's been great getting to have a long conversation with you, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.
Anything you want to leave us with? You don't have to, but
I just think that there's hope for everybody. And I'm really sorry for whoever took away somebody's hope. But I hope that some of these words can bring it back. There really is hope for everybody.
beautiful. Love it. All right. Well, we'll see you around.
It's good.
All right,
See ya.
take care. Bye-bye. And that concludes our interview with Tara King. What a beautiful interview. It was a lot of fun, very informative. I hope everyone enjoyed it, found something useful and interesting. If anyone is dealing with chronic pain and they want to seek out help, we talked about Lin Health and kind of talked a little bit about how that works, what it is. But if you want more information about that, you can find that at www.lin, that's Lin, .health. And as always, if you want to work with me as a coach or find out more, you can look me up at www.kylebonbreak.com. And as always, you can find more about the show, listen to other episodes on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. You can find us on YouTube. And as always, like and subscribe. We appreciate that. Leave comments. And you can always send us email at esotericwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send us ideas for future episodes, make requests, leave us feedback, positive or negative. Until next time, keep asking the tough questions. Bye-bye.